what the team then thinks is good Lord, how can we get that guy out of the way? How can we get that person, that leader? How can we get him out of the way? They're so annoying. We're just doing our work, and we want to be recognized for that. We want somebody who's part of our team, not on that team. That them us concept. You are the one that creates that as a leader.
This is one of my absolute hot buttons. It is a trigger for me every time.
What do you think? How would you do in your past roles, Trice? Would they open armed have you coming right back in, or how would that go for you, son?
That's a great question. The other point you made that was really interesting is if your team has social events and you are not invited, they see you differently.
Do you like me? That's a scary question. Do you like me, right? And I think I probably would have at times gotten one of those half head cocked like a, well, yeah.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another edition of The Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice, brought to you by Healthy Brands. Ryan, what's up?
Hi, Trice. Good to see you again.
You too, buddy. It's been a couple weeks. People probably at home don't see that, but we don't talk every day, shockingly.
Yeah. We literally just got on here and decided what we're going to talk about today. So, there's not a lot of prep, but I guarantee you the context is going to be really good today.
Yeah, I think I agree because, we've both lived in this world long enough to have seen these moments and have some context. So I know you've got a good one for us. So let's just dive in.
Sure.
You posted a video on this topic earlier this week. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you got going on?
Right. I posted a video on LinkedIn on this, and there's a YouTube challenge. It's called the Fire and Hire Challenge for leadership for business owners, managers, CMOs, CEOs, anybody who's leading people. So this covers a wide spectrum, but it's a real true test of leadership. So let me lay it out for you. So your team that you manage, to say they have the power to hire and fire, right? So they fire you. You walk in the door. The image I picture here is they walk in the door one morning, get ready to start your day, and they're all standing in front of the door in the lobby, and they're holding a folder that's got your papers in it. Maybe there's a box, and they're all smiling and giggling, and they let you know you're gone, but maybe not forever. And they're going to talk about it, and they're going to actually, they scheduled a meeting, and they're going to meet in the conference room, and they are going to discuss whether or not they're going to hire you back. You have 2 days. I like 2 days. Sounds like a good number. 2 days off, and you're probably going to be nervous during those 2 days. But you have 2 days off, and they are going to then tell you what the results are of their meeting. So they have it scheduled. They go into the conference room. They have this discussion, and they have an outcome. So the question is, and the challenge is, do they hire you back in the leadership role? Do they hire you back exactly where you were because you were doing a great job? You were being supportive. You were motivating them. They like you. They don't think other people are necessarily going to be better at that job, or that there's nobody existing in the team that's going to do a better job, or that they think deserves a chance to do it. They value your experience. They're learning from you, and the company and the department's moving forward. Are they, what criteria are they going to judge you by, and will they hire you back in that role? And that's the first part of that challenge. I'll talk about the second question a little bit later in this show, but I'm going to sit on that one for a second because I have an answer based on my past jobs, how that would go. What do you think? How would you do in your past roles, Trice? Would they open armed, have you coming right back in, or
Mm,
how would that go for you, son?
that's a great question. And so I think the context of this is you're giving people a chance to reflect on what are their teams really looking for and what they bring to the table. But it takes into like account probably quite for a lot of organizations the sort of political landscape that occurs inside of organizations.
Mhm.
So for the last few years, I've mostly worked in startups, so I don't have a team. It's me. So it's a little bit different there. But in a previous role where I had a team of people, a good sized number, um, and I was a CMO, I think they would hire me back. But I think the reason is two reasons. One, I think generally I got along really well with everybody on that team and respected everybody a lot. I think a few of them would probably think they could do the job better, or
Mhm.
that they could bring somebody else in that could probably do the job better. I'm 100% confident in that. To be honest, if they didn't, I'd be surprised because there's should always be somebody on the team that's like aspiring to grow in their careers in some way, most likely. But I think the reason they bring me back is one, they generally do like me and we all get along and we respect each other enough to really understand our roles. But mostly it's probably because they don't want to deal with the rest of the bullshit, the executive team. And they want someone to be a buffer and no one wants to do the job. And I think that's primarily why people would bring back any sort of leadership role. Is just sort of like I don't want to have to deal with all that, and I'm better off having you do it than me do it. And
I think this raises the bar really high.
me too.
I mean, how high could it be raised? Everybody has a different opinion about what leadership is or should be. And no matter how good you are at it, you're always being judged as the leader. And
Oh
I
yeah,
think they're always looking for you to make a mistake or things that you should be better at. And that's the topics I think they discuss way more than the great things you're doing, the things that you're really good at. So it does work against you in thinking at it this way.
hmm
I don't think it's 100% fair necessarily, because there's things that
yeah,
leaders have to do that aren't necessarily popular.
yeah,
Uh, and sometimes it's not them making decisions if they're like the CMO or they're not the owner.
yeah,
Uh, so I think
yeah.
I think it's just a really critical way of looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, would they, and what would they say? And
hmm
because they're not ever going to, if you ask them, give you
A straight answer.
100% truth, right?
Yeah,
They're going to sugarcoat it somehow.
yeah,
Like, I'm sure they would hire you back, sir, or me.
yeah. Well,
I'm
if you
sure
think
they
about it
would,
too,
you
yeah.
know.
If you think about it, if you are a sort of downstream leader, you're a departmental leader, you're a C-suite leader, but you're not CEO or business owner. Um, your answer about what your team would do with you probably reflects what your answer would be of the CEO of the company.
Mhm.
You might be in a situation where you're like, I know the only reason they're bringing, like in mine, like they may only bring me back because they don't want to deal with the BS.
Mhm.
And in that same token, would I hire the CEO of that company back because of whatever reason? Maybe or maybe not, right? And if the answer is you wouldn't hire the CEO back, and that someone else in the organization or you could do the job, in your opinion, could do the job better, it probably is directly reflected also in what your team thinks of you
Yeah.
and your ability to do that job. And that's really interesting because that means that there's a cultural problem somewhere. And that never going to come out in sort of this kind of thought process or questioning. You know what I mean? And that's interesting as well.
This goes back to that personal brand. I mean, personal brand conversation
Sure.
and episode we did. That's when this idea first came about, when we were like coming up content and details for that episode. And I had that thought about, well, how would I judge if my personal brand's good? And I think that's a measurement. So I had to reflect on this question myself and go back to positions where I managed a lot of people. And
Yeah.
there was a company I worked at as the VP of marketing and sales. And in that role, I would say the marketing people would have hired me back. Yes, absolutely. I think the sales team that I managed under me, there was roughly 10 people in that group. I would say no way. There's no way they would have hired me back.
Really?
Absolutely. They would have fired me. And when I came back, one of them would have been in charge. In that case, I know, right? Like,
Yeah, of course.
uh,
I mean,
I mean, I'm being real with it.
yeah,
They Sales management's really difficult. And if you are holding people accountable, nobody loves that. So having sales managers that are really good can walk that line between holding people accountable, getting results, and they're loved.
yeah,
I've met guys like that, and it's fascinating. These guys have a skill set that I don't quite understand how they're wired, but they do attract people. They're great people, social skills, and that yet they can turn around with love and ask something from somebody or talk about where they're at with their sales, and the person really just goes, yeah, I agree. I've got to do this or that. And that's the part where I would tell you, I don't think I had the respect of that team. Many of them had been doing sales in that organization much longer than I had even been in the industry. And so I think that team wanted two things. They wanted experience beyond theirs so they could learn more technical parts of their business,
yeah,
of what they did. And I think that they wanted this thing. It's kind of like what you described with a buffer. What they wanted was kind of that buffer, but they also wanted somebody to get the hell out of their way.
yeah.
They really just wanted you.
Somebody to take
They
care
wanted
of them.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were a support mechanism only, and if you're causing any pain or rifts in what I'm doing, holding me accountable, that was not something they wanted. They wanted zero accountability because as salespeople, they were wired to kind of like always have always have everything moving forward and always trying. And they were good people, and I would tell you they had that mechanism in them. They were always trying hard, and so to their point, I agree with it, but they did not want to be managed. And so hands down, I would have not have been hired back in that situation. So
yeah. That's interesting. I think it's interesting that the two different groups would react to you so differently. You know, the sales part is, and I was just having a conversation with a friend about, leading a sales organization, and he was the head of sales and had a sales manager that managed, a group of people who was just very much a rah 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 guy and no accountability. And and so I think that's really funny and interesting, just because there are a lot of sales people who are good, who grow into being management type folks and aren't always great managers because
true.
they don't understand how to coach and guide and mentor and hold accountable at the same time. And you're right, that's a really delicate balance and unique personality. And the ones who are great at that are amazing leaders in a lot of ways. And to your point, to your question, I've posed a similar question to myself previously of like, not would they hire me, but if I was given the opportunity to choose a CEO, what kind of person would I want to work with and for? And essentially replace the person that I may be reporting to currently. And same thought process of like the kinds of leader that I want to work with and that would really be inspiring to me and would understand my point of view and encourage and empower that, that, feedback and direction and thought and engaged in it. But it was at the same time very capable of managing the business and I've thought about that. There's one guy I've worked with that he's never been the CEO of a company. And if I had the opportunity to bring somebody in to run sales for something, or be CEO, he probably would be the guy, even though he's never done it before. And just because I think he's really a great fit for some people. And, if I ever, I would never fire him. I would 100% hire him back every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the guys who, or the people that I worked for that started businesses and grew them to, past 10 million, they started from scratch and they never worked in another company or for somebody else, or they worked in smaller companies and they didn't have the experience past that point. I find that they struggle often in getting and managing a company at that size. They won't either let go of certain things or micromanage or they just won't let go of control, right? They won't let go of the vine thing. And, that's one issue. Or the complete opposite. They actually are insecure about everything and let everybody do their jobs, and they don't really take control of the business, and it goes amok. And I've seen both of those scenarios, and a lot of times those people are really valuable to the company for many reasons because of their knowledge and what they've done, but they far out, like the company's outgrown. In the position of leadership, they need something much different than where they're at. So I would tell you, when I had my agency, was when I really grew in business ownership. And early on, I would say definitely the first like 3 or 4 years I had that agency, I would say it would have been close, but my guess is they would not have hired me back.
Wow.
And the reason is, and this is really speaking to CEOs out there or business owners that started it themselves from scratch. Yeah. What made you good at growing a business was your drive. And so you were more driven than you were understanding management and people a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And so you unintentionally railroaded people, or you maybe thought you knew best because you really needed to make decisions quick. You needed to be precise about what you were going to do and communicate that very well, clear. Oftentimes it comes across as a dictatorship, and a lot of times it is. And so early on, it's very difficult growing a business from scratch, and you are judged a lot, and you don't always make the right decisions for the greater good of the whole, because your personality and the emotion that you're in, this energy is moving forward. You're the guy or the gal pushing the company forward. And if you stop or let off the gas, it's going to fail. Early on, that is absolutely true. It's honest and it's real. I would not have been hired back in my agency probably the first 3 or 4 years. I would say after it got big enough and I calmed down, and I slowed down a bit and started paying attention to my people more and started like understanding that I worked for them. And I really changed my attitude. And I was not as offensive to people with my personality. And that's when I would say I would have been hired back. But that kind of leads to the next question in this challenge is, what role would they hire you back in? And I think they would have hired me back as the company grew, but I don't think they would have hired me in that role. I think they would have brought me back in sales. I think they would have put me in a sales role, not a sales manager. We didn't have that many salespeople, it's just me and 2 others. But I think they would have put me in sales and said, go do that. That's what you do good. You go talk to people. You're a great strategist. You can bring them in and help tell them, what they need done. Come up with a strategy. Tell us what that is. We're going to go implement it, but hand them off to an account manager and get out of our way. And so I would say that they would have not hired me back in that role. They would, because they wanted a more passive leader. They wanted somebody who was moving slower, who was more thoughtful, I think, along the way throughout their day and through their direction. And although I was thoughtful, my process, or the way I'm wired, I make decisions very quickly. And so the appearance can come across that I didn't think it through and I did. So I think they would have put me in sales. So that's the second question is where would they bring you back at? And I know in the CMO position, the question sometimes is, do people judge you and go, hey, they're really good at SEO or paid search or strategy, but I'm not crazy about him as a leader.
Yeah.
You know, have you thought about that scenario before?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, and just on that topic, I don't think the team would have brought me back as the leader, and because there were a couple of people that had some really strong opinions, not necessarily great leadership, but strong opinions about the way things should be done, and didn't take direction really well. So I think in general, even though I got along really well with my team, and the people that had the strongest opinions and didn't take direction well aren't the people, or were probably people I got along with the least. And so I think in general, the team would say they needed somebody to protect them from the BS outside of the group, and especially at
Yeah.
the leadership level. But they don't necessarily see me, they didn't see me as the best leader. And I think that's fair in an organization that's significantly sized. There are a lot of influences on marketing, and a lot of leaders have their hands very, very deep in marketing pockets. Departmental leaders, division heads that have their own marketing budgets have a very, very strong influence on how that money gets spent. And you, in a lot of cases, you guide it, but you do not decide it. And even as a CMO, you just don't. And I think that my team probably saw that as a weakness, and my inability to influence the leadership that had strong opinions on where their money should be spent. So I don't think they would have put me in the same spot, to be honest. I think it probably would have been like a marketing manager. So I'm still maybe managing the team, but not necessarily the decision maker.
Mhm.
And that the whole group got to have a lot more say in how we structure budgets, or how we make decisions, or how we put together even specific campaigns, and how we put these recommendations in front of people. But the hard truth of it is it's a double-edged sword, right? And you can't say you need somebody to protect you from these people out here who have strong opinions and strong influence, and you just kind of want to keep your head down and do your job. You can't have that and also be like, you're not capable of being our leader. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
so I mean, I guess if they looked at it that way, maybe they wouldn't bring me back, honestly, because they needed somebody different
Yeah.
in that role. So, which is totally possible. I mean, this
Yeah.
is an honest answer as I can get. Is it is very possible, because while I got along with the team great, and it was a really good opportunity for all of us, truth of the matter is there was a lot of stuff to deal with, and a lot of people in the organization that were involved, because there were 55, 60 different budgets inside of one of these groups. You know what I mean? And every team had their own, and the influence was you got to have a relationship with every one of those people and help them build the budget, not just dictate to them what the rules of engagement are going to be, because that's just not how it's going to operate. It's not real. So
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
double-edged sword. Like, including the team, let them be a part of the decision making. Right? I've seen that, and I've seen it backfire. I've seen it work really well both. I
I
when it,
I try to usually take, like every year when you do your planning and your strategy, I'm like, here are all the silos of work we're going to do. We know all of those for the most part. Maybe there are some new ones that are on the radar that we're going to try and build that in. But for the most part, everybody who's responsible for any of those things, we're going to build some general consensus around the direction of that together. I'm not doing it
yeah,
in a vacuum. I'm a CMO. I don't know every instance of every campaign. That's just not possible.
yeah,
And especially if you're like $1 million plus budget, like there's just not possible to know all the ins and outs. So you have to take that. But at the same time, you generalize. When you present that to different groups, you're not giving them, every ounce of what it is. So yeah, it's interesting.
I think the CEOs, their answers, in my head, I'm hearing the answers that they would give in this question.
Yeah.
One of them I hear is, who cares? I'm the boss. And it's like, okay, well, that's truth.
That might be telling too.
It says a lot, right?
Sure, yeah.
Who cares? Well, everybody cares. I mean, turnover, buddy. Turnover can be.
You're going to care sooner or later, one way or the other.
Exactly. Like, don't come crying to me later because you said who cares.
It's not because people aren't coming to work for you or leaving because of amazing opportunities all everywhere. It's because you suck.
Yeah.
Like, let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what I appreciate about what you said was you're recognizing and trying to be real with whether they would or would not. And you're trying to be honest with the answer to that. And that's really difficult to do. And I tell CEOs, spend time with that question. Like, spend some time really processing it.
It's great. It's a great mindset to think about.
I do too. I think that it's a way to hold yourself accountable because nobody's holding you accountable when you're the boss. When you're C-suite, that's different. CEOs holding you accountable to some degree, and
Sure.
Maybe the company as a whole is holding you accountable to the things you promised them. But in general, it's CEO, or if you're the CEO, you have to hold yourself accountable. And I think that if you constantly ask yourself this question, like at the end of the day, hey, would they hire me back tomorrow based on what happened today? It's critical. It's harsh. And I'm a big advocate of being good to yourself. That's definitely one of my goals this year is, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. Be patient, take time and don't expect the world in one day situation. But I think that's honest. I think CEOs also would say, well, it's a balance. I'm going to make a lot of decisions and they're not always going to love me for it. And they may not always hire me back based on the decisions I have to make. It's tough at the top. I think there's truth in that also. I just think that it's a measuring scale that let's say that the scale is, 1 to 100. 100 is 100% they would hire you back, and 1 would be, you're fired. But let's say that on an average, it's reasonable that you're somewhere in a ballpark of a 60 to 70, on that scale.
Sure.
Okay. We'll always be improving that. Try to lift it up 1 or 2%. Always try to be moving the needle on that piece of it, and try to be gaining the popular vote in this situation for sure. But knowing that the farther away from, the 50 halfway mark, into, towards the 100 mark, like the better you're going to be. So this is a mental game that you have to play, and you don't have any feedback a lot of times as a leader from the people that you manage. You don't get that. I will tell you that the one thing after I sold my digital agency in 2018, the one thing that people have commented over and over that worked for me, and I'm still very good friends with a lot of people that work for me, that's a good sign, right? Is they said, Ryan, what I appreciated the most was how much I learned from you. And so in my case, I think understanding my true value was in helping others learn the digital environment and strategy and teaching them. And I would have these sessions where I would schedule them, and it wasn't mandatory. You could come in if you wanted to and learn about SEO or paid search or social. Like, you can come in, and sometimes other people were the teachers also of whatever the topic was, not just me. But that was understanding what they truly valued in me the most after I sold that agency. And so I kind of take that into my career now of what I'm doing afterwards. And it's part of what this podcast is. It's helping people understand certain topics or concepts or ideas. And I do that in coaching. But I thought that was interesting. I don't know, just because they maybe wouldn't hire me back as a leader always, it doesn't mean you don't have value. And I think understanding that value while you're working in your position is extremely important, because you know what you can emphasize and also know what you can work on.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I used to have a boss when I was early in my career. I started in sales, right? But it was in the media company. So it was a weird crossover with marketing a lot. And I got promoted as a sales manager, and I was managing people that were twice my age easily. And which was really hard when you're 26, 27 years old. Um, and he said, to the team often, this is not a democracy. I want everybody's opinion. I want to have a good understanding of what's happening and what the options are. But ultimately, it's not a democracy. And he was very good about it. He was, while we ultimately, like, I worked for this guy for about 7 years, and at the end of it, I felt like I didn't have a lot of respect for him anymore. But looking back on it, I use his sort of truisms as my examples all the time. And I think about that often now, because in line with this question, I would not have brought him back. I would have brought him back in some capacity, but he didn't manage people well per se. He was very isolated from the business. This is really early in my career, so the department heads, we basically ran everything, and the only time we really got him involved were monetary decisions, things where we're like, we think our recommendation is we do, this kind of investment in these areas. And but he had a really, really close relationship with one department head, and it just really altered my opinion when I was leaving. And I didn't leave the company. I went into a different role with the same firm. And so it was really kind of a strange situation from that perspective. But now that I look back on it, I think, he's since left that company and moved into sales. He's a sales manager, and he's been a sales manager for years and years and years since then. And that's where he came up as well. And so I look back on the things that he taught me, and I respect him more now than I ever did then. Granted, it's been 20 years, and I've got a lot of hindsight and a lot of nostalgia probably for that. But I also think back, I think about that, and I'm like, if that's how we're going to look at people and leaders and judgments in situations, that's not bad. That's not a bad thing. It's more about me growing than it was about him, probably. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think your point's totally valid. It reminds me of like parenthood and teenagers. And so
it's very similar, right?
I mean, when you're a teenager and you're young and you think you know everything and you don't know anything. And sorry, Kobe, my son. And you think but you don't know, and you're making decisions for them. You're making decisions, and you're trying to tell them for this is the right thing. It's the right decision, and they're bucking you. So move that years later, and all of a sudden you look back on that and go, oh my God, I hated them. And they were really good parents. Like they were actually really looking out for me, really saying the right things, doing the right things. And in this case, I'm using my example, and I was lucky. I understand that for you listeners that only had a single parent. I get it. Like, I understand I'm a single parent now. And so I understand the value of that at this point, but I absolutely hated him for a couple of years. It was, I was rebelling. Right. And I think about how many young people I had working at my agency, and they were very inexperienced, but they were of good character, and they were very rational, good people, but they didn't have this is why I don't think it's 100% fair to judge yourself this way is the people that were working for me were highly inexperienced in life and career.
Yeah.
And so they were in the earlier stages. So they didn't really truly have a measuring stick. They didn't know how to compare me to other leaders. And although I know I have tons of areas I could have been better at, and I know I wasn't always the right thing at the right moment that they needed. I get that. But I do think that early on in your career, you judge very harshly, and because you're judging on the view of the world the way you think should be,
Yeah.
not and for you, and so a good leader sometimes would get fired and not hired back,
Yeah,
and it could be for the wrong reasons.
for sure.
And like you're saying, there's a lot of people, that I can think of in my now that I say, wow, they were such a great mentor. And I left their companies even not really loving them, not thinking that. And
Yeah.
as I look back on it, my appreciation has rose higher and higher and higher with them.
It's funny you say that because just to my example of the boss that I had previously, the people I've had the opportunity to work for some great leaders, and some not so great leaders, and with all of them, you have an evaluation of their ability to do the job and their ability to get the most out of you, as well as other people. Um, I've had bosses that I've loved dearly, and some that I've just not liked in any way, shape, or form. And either way, they made decisions based on their understanding of the business and not necessarily mine, their own perspectives. And that's fine. That you kind of walk away from all that and you say, it is what it is. But I think the ones I've had a couple where maybe the situation wasn't ideal, and that boss has been handling it a certain way, and I leave the company or whatever the situation is, but later I'm like, I really, really respect that person a lot, and whether we're close now or not doesn't, most cases we're not, I still see them as a really, really powerful influence on me.
Mm-hmm.
and learning something from that experience. And just to your point before, the more my career has grown, the faster that process has become for me. So I worked for somebody for a really short period of time where the situation just obviously was not a good fit, culturally wasn't a great fit, but one of the leaders that was in the organization was somebody that I just, to this day, I just respect the hell out of. And we're not close. We haven't spoken in years, but I'd have a beer with this person in a heartbeat every time. I just really, really think well of them. And, we didn't have the best exit, that happens. And I still think I still think that, they're a hell of a person. And, so I think that one of the good things about this question is, yeah, it's great self-reflection, and it's not fair. It's totally biased based on popularity, and you could buy the vote in a lot of ways, right? But I think most people, if they really, really thought about this question or had to make this decision, they would be very thoughtful about it, because it's not easy, and it can't be a popularity vote, and it has to really be based on actual value.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they're not great leaders, do they bring a lot, to your point earlier, do they bring a lot of value to the table?
Yeah. I think it's important for leaders to think about this, do your own self-reflection. But I would say also break it down into these categories. So this is to put my coaching hat on now. I would say for my coaching clients, I break it down into what I call LTMA, and that is measure yourself leadership, right? So that definitely would come into play with that decision of whether or not they would hire you back. So measuring your leadership. T is teaching. So are they learning from you? Teaching without forcing that. Sometimes they don't want to be taught. So find out what they want to learn, right? And so teaching, managing processes and people are two different things. And so but can you do both? Can you do that effectively? Managing people, problems, helping solve them, teamwork, right? And then accountability is is the last one, and the least favorite when it comes to voting on you, whether or not they would hire you. If you having to do a lot of holding people accountable, there's probably some other maybe underlying issues going on with managing and managing processes, probably those types of things, or maybe your personality needs some adjustment. But it could be those things. But accountability is the hard one. But I would say this: nobody thinks your job is easy when you're in leadership or business owning. Nobody thinks your job is easy. Your job is extremely difficult. You're going to be harsh on yourself, harder than anybody else, probably. It is a mental game for sure. And it's control over the environment and doing a good job, but it's also control over your own actions, what you say and do. And time comes into play with, how much time you have to do all those things. But I go back to when I'm measuring outside of the people, and I take all those, the political side of it out of it. And I go, how did I measure up against, leadership, teaching or training, managing and accountability, LTMA? How did I do? And I can almost score it like a, ACT test, break it down to the different categories and then come up with a score on roughly how am I doing. I've done that with people before and with leaders, and we've taken a look at that, and it's really hard to grade yourself. So you might have to ask some questions to the people you manage or work with. And I always measure myself against the leaders I'm surrounded by or ones I've had experience working with.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, well, in teaching, who did I work with that was really good at that? How am I doing compared to that person? And then same thing, who is really good at holding people accountable? How am I doing compared to that person? So kind of like having a person, an actual name in each category that you want to be as good as, and then trying to get as good in each one of those 4 categories as that person.
Yeah, I love that. I think in organizations, if you have the opportunity to hear from someone in another department that doesn't work with you at all, that's to say, you seem to be one of the managers that really gets it, or you seem to do a really good job with your team and you have a great relationship, or you seem to be really flexible with your team. And, I think all of those are subtle ways of other people recognizing that you compared to other leaders in the organization are doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because that's their measuring stick, right? It could be other companies and other leaders they've worked with before, but really it's, as an organization, how do we feel? How do I feel about this group? And of this group, who are the key managers that really seem to be working on my behalf and helpful to people like me, whether they manage me or not. Are they good with their own team, and would I aspire my boss to be like them because they're good with their team? And that's a great measuring stick. And if you're in an organization where you ever get to hear that kind of feedback, it feels a little weird, but at the same time, you're like, oh, that's really nice. It's really cool. Like, there are people in other parts of the organization that even see how we are, even though we're going to be harder on ourselves, as a group, because we know each other really well within my actual team. But other people are going to look at us and go, wow, those guys, they really seem to like get along well, appreciate each other, work together well.
That's good.
Somebody that respects them. That's
good perspective on your personal brand. That's reaching beyond your department, right? Your personal brand goes
stuff you don't see.
It goes far out, right? It's way outside work, even. Like it's big. You got to consider your friends, family, your coworkers, people outside your department. Everybody is in that environment of judging what your personal brand is, or observing what they think your personal brand is.
Yep.
I think about, how do you get the real answers from people that work for you about, how they see you, what the value is in you. And I think you can always ask and go around each one of them, say, hey, what is it do you think I do best? What am I, when you think of me, what do you think of? Well, they're not going to tell you the negative stuff, right? Like, they're not going to tell you that. Most of them won't, they don't want to
ask for it.
They don't want to risk getting fired. Most of the time they won't. Sometimes you might get 1 or 2 things out of them, but I do that. I've done it before, actually. Write down the things they say and you go, okay, those are my positives. Okay. That's the 10%. That's the 90% is all the other stuff that they didn't say.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at self-improvement, all the things I'm questioning if I'm good at them or not, if I wrote those down and then hear what they say I'm good at, I can cross those off. It's all the stuff that's left that they didn't say tells you what you really wanted to hear. What you wanted to know is, am I good at that? And what you're getting told is no. That's the harsh reality, is you're getting told no because
That's where your
nobody said it.
Opportunity for improvement is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's hard to take, isn't it? It's hard to go, oh crap. Because I mean, in a lot of cases, they all said one or two things. Like in the one where I said it was the learning and teaching part of it. But if they asked me how I managed, how do I do about holding accountable, like all those things, like, do you like me? That's a scary question. Do you like me? Right. And I think I probably would have at times gotten one of those half head cocked like a, well, yeah.
You're okay. Yeah.
I mean,
that's a really great endorsement. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you ask him to, go get a drink after work and hang out as a team or something else. Oh, I got to go to the gym. The guys are playing cards tonight.
Yeah. It's funny. It's really a couple of good points. Like in situations where, if your team won't give you, even if you ask it differently, right? What do you feel like my strongest, point of value is to this team and organization versus where's my biggest opportunity for improvement? And you put them really soft and corporate speakish like that, you're probably going to get some people to give you some stuff. But truth is, if they don't, that actually speaks more about you than them. Because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you don't have a good relationship with them because they're not willing to give you, constructive feedback, even if you pose it really, really as constructive feedback and not criticism. And you give your feedback to them the same way. Like, I want this to be constructive. It's not criticism. And I think that really is telling. The other point you made that was really interesting is if your team has social events, happy hours, whatnot, and you are not invited, they see you differently. One, they may see you as a leader, like you're a leader. They don't want that line to cross. But they may also see it or you may also have to look at it as they really don't want to associate with you outside of work, and that means you're not friends. And that could be okay.
Yeah, it can be okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, we respect each other. We get along well. We work well together, but we're not friends. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is when you're like, I'll give you my personal example. I like being friends with the people I work with, and I had to learn as I became more senior that even though I wanted to get along with everybody. And even though I wanted that mutual respect, I couldn't think of it as friendship because we are colleagues. And if we didn't work together, we might be friends. But because we have this situation where one of us is a boss of another one, we can't be friends. We can't truly be friends. We have to keep it a little separated. Otherwise, they can't get the separation from work that they need. And I inevitably, without intention, will take advantage of the situation because we're friends. Mm-hmm. And I'll be like, I can't be honest with you, or you can't be honest with me, or I'll be too honest with you and you'll be too honest with me, which is common as well. So, at first I was like, frankly, we're like, oh, that kind of sucks. We're not happy hour friends anymore. Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But then later I was like, you know what? I respect that. Actually, they want to have their own time together. That's like a group within a group.
It's still teamwork. It's 100%. Still, and that's the part that I came to is it's still teamwork. You're actually doing a great job. It's more of a pat on the back that you're doing a great job of hiring people that are a good culture fit because they like each other. Let them go do that and have that downtime away from you. I mean, again, I always bring up raising kids. It's like they don't want to just hang out with the parents all the time. They want to go be kids, like go do stuff and be free. Like, go
Yep.
do that and have fun.
Be with their peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one last point I wanted to make, and
Yeah.
you reminded me of this with this story, because if you want to guarantee not getting hired back by your team, do this. This is real old school, but it happens every day still. I'm shaking my head going, I can visually see this happening, that it happened in work, right? The C-suite kisses up to the CEO, and this works for the CEO and for the C-suite both, but they're all in a kiss-ass club. They're in a big kiss-ass club at the top. They're in the club and you're not, as the employee. Like, you're one of the team. Like, it's clear. They make it clear you're not one of the team.
Oh yeah.
They make it clear your team hates you if you act like this. Here's what happens. You're sitting at work, and some of you, like, you don't see this because you're working virtually, but or you see it at times and you hear the stories. But the point is your boss is kissing ass to the CEO. Or you're watching a CEO only really interact with those people. They come out of the boardroom laughing. You know, it's like a Key and Peele like type of skit. They always come out of the bathroom laughing together. They come back from lunch laughing together. They come back out of the conference room from a meeting laughing together. Pat each other on the back. Oh, that's funny. That's a good one. They're always talking. They're talking about all this stuff. And when they come out of the room, they're laughing almost to get attention for themselves, and then they walk past everybody else and don't even connect eyes.
Yeah.
People hate you. You just did what's going to get you fired.
100%.
You made it clear that you are in the club.
Yeah, you're better.
The old boy club, right? And I've heard a lot of women leaders talk about the old boy club, because they know it's a real thing, right? And I'm with them on this. It's not just a woman; it's everybody that's not in that club. You're out. And if you want to really separate yourself, what the team then thinks is, good Lord, how can we get that guy out of the way? How can we get that person, that leader? How can we get him out of the way? Like, they're so annoying. We're just doing our work, and we want to be recognized for that. We want somebody who's part of our team, not on that team. That them us concept. You are the one that creates that as a leader. And so, yeah, you want to guarantee you get fired and never hired back, and you not ever have the respect of your team. Let them know you're above them by doing those types of things.
This is one of my absolute hot buttons. It is a trigger for me every time, and not the exact way you're phrasing it, but it's 100%. I hate exclusion.
Yeah,
it pisses me off, and I hate to say it like this, but if you're in a, there are C-suite positions that are more superior. There just are, right? And so if you're a business owner, you're a CEO, you already know this. CEO, CFO, you're in your own group. You talk about money all the time. Operational divisional type manager, who's probably potentially like a C-suite kind of person, is typically your third. Human resources might be your fourth. Marketing and IT, admin types, there's like chief level admin type people, or sales is maybe in there like fourth, fifth. Marketing, HR, admin, all those people are like sort of at the bottom, and that's the hierarchy.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Where you put marketing for sure, right?
It's in the bottom, and CFO and CEO, everybody in between. So the group at the bottom, maybe it might be mixed up a little bit. CEO and CFO are 100%. That's the way it is, and the other tiers in between might be could be interchangeable, but that's the tier. And now sales is easy to get into the good old boys club because they make money. So they talk about money, they make money, they're in front of customers, they have a lot of exposure to CEO and CFO. So that very quickly becomes sort of the crew. And it's really, really funny to observe this as an outsider. But it also sort of it is true. Like for people like me who've been a CMO before, one of the reasons I think my teams typically like me is I'm not a part of the club.
Yeah.
I don't like the club mentality. It kind of pisses
Neither
me
do I.
off. I really, really want to be a part of it because I feel like that's important to the organization. But and I want to like and be respected by my peers, and I want it to be mutual.
Yeah.
But it's not. And that, no disrespect to me, I think in a lot of cases it's just the natural hierarchy of business.
Hmm.
These guys live it every day. They're responsible for the funding that comes into the organization to make it grow. They're responsible for the management of that funding to make it grow and to get the output. So they're just different. And marketing is a tool, is a part of that. Human resources is a piece of that. There's a lot of risk management that goes on there. IT, same way, a critical tool to making all of it happen. And all those people are decision makers, but they are not ultimately the decision maker group. And that, people don't answer to shareholders or owners, or these people don't. These people do. And I think it's stupid of me to think we're going to all be equal, because we're not. But it does trigger me often. And you're right. I think the people, to your point, that abuse this good old boy network sort of situation and have abuse of power, that's what we're talking about here, abuse of power, are the ones who, from the employee's perspective, would get fired because they're not living to make employees and customers happy. They're
right. They're living to make the CEO happy
and themselves. Yes.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking about these dynamics, I was thinking about, I think you and I both buy into the concept that when we have a team working for us, our main role is to support that team and do that. Well, I've seen situations where that's what the leader's doing, and they're doing a fantastic job. If you ask their people, they would hire them back over and over. They love them. They're doing a great job of those things. They're actually doing the LTMA. They're doing all those things. They're great, but they're not kissing the CEO's ass. They're not part of that club because they're spending more time with doing their role and their job well. They're not spending all their time kissing ass and brown nosing, and they're not part of that top club. And those guys get fired. They get fired because one of the other people in the C-suite sees that they're not part of the club and brings it up to the CEO and says they don't fit and they don't belong.
Yeah.
This isn't like one time. I've seen this a dozen times
all the time, 100%.
And it's
the
like
vast majority of people that exit the C-suite, this is why.
Yeah.
Because the C-suite organization itself doesn't feel they're a good fit with them. Doesn't matter what they're a good fit for the rest of the organization. They could be an amazing fit in their team. I've read a lot of stories about this, especially in tech. They could be an amazing lead for their team, but they don't fit the C-suite.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what? It's just not a good fit for us. And you're like, you have like, I think it's the woman who is the CEO and founder of the dating app. Is it Bumble? She's got a story like that. Like, she worked for another tech startup, and it was a named one, like Google, Facebook, somebody like that, and came out of it and was basically like, they basically saw her as a bad fit to the organization, and then she goes and she founds $1 billion company. Yeah,
I think it was another dating app. She was in charge of another dating app.
Yeah, maybe it was Tinder or something like that.
I think it was Tinder, and
she came out of it, and she's clearly, this one of the smart people in the room. She's no slouch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stories like that, and it's always the same thing.
Yeah. This message is for CEOs. That message is for CEOs. It's like
100%.
Watch your leadership team. Watch who you are, where you're giving credit. Are you giving credit to loyalty? Are you giving credit to loyalty, length of time at the company, and the way that leader makes you feel? Or are you judging them off this other criteria we're discussing today?
Yeah.
Because that's the criteria, Mr. or Mrs. CEO. That's the criteria that judges whether or not they're going to hire you back.
It's funny.
They will not hire you back if you are the kiss ass club guy. Which good Lord, have seen
So
this
many people like
recently,
that.
and it's got pain to it. And it's a little bit disgusting. My stomach churns just thinking about how much they kiss butt. And it's like, I was doing my job well, and it made others look bad because I was doing all this stuff with my team. I didn't truly want to be in the club. It wasn't the way I thought. Had I thought that way, I think I would still be there.
I was told once, you don't making decisions about my team. So, I won't tell the example because it's too obvious, but I was making decisions for my team, and I was told by a new boss, you don't have the authority to do that. I'm like, watch. Too late. I did. I did it. I made a decision because I knew you guys would make the wrong one. And so I just did it. And I'm like, if you don't like it, you can tell other people how to do it. And you can tell me you don't like it. That's fine. But I'm not changing my mind. And that sucks. But it is funny. You and I, we get to the real hardcore meat of our podcast at the end. Every time. Sorry, people. Like this is the message.
Hey, play it in reverse, like a Kiss album. Play it in reverse. See what it says. There might be some evil hidden messages in there.
Probably. I'm sure there's something subliminal in there. Yeah. This is the message for CEOs. It's not mind your P's and Q's and you got to cater to everybody. That's not what we're saying. But what we are saying here is you have to really manage your C-suite. You have to be a team. I actually had this exact conversation this week with somebody. You have to think about it like we are a group. We are going to make good recommendations and good decisions based on what we all think. With a grain of salt, the CEO is still, it's not a dictatorship, but it's not a democracy either, and you've got to empower these people, these senior leaders, to make smart decisions. But you got, more than anything else, you got to be really open to having all these conversations amongst each other and treating everybody like peers and really respecting that and understanding that it could be very, very easy for you, the head of sales and the CFO, to slip into your corner, talk about money all day long, pat each other on the back, have drinks, go to lunch, spend times with each other outside of the office, know each other's wives and spouses and, husbands.
Go to ball games.
All that. Go be bros, right? Go bro out. You could totally do that. It's super easy. When you do it, you isolate the other leaders of your organization.
Yep.
They don't feel like they're a good fit. And what's going to happen is all those great people are walking. And as soon as those good people walk, all the other people that respected them walk. And all of a sudden you bring in shit and you get shit.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
You send a message loud and clear about what you value as a leader and people. And it's the wrong message. That's a great wrap up. I appreciate that. That was a great way to finish. Trice, thank you for that. And then I should mention to everybody that we did discuss making this whole episode whether or not your mama jokes were a good idea in the workplace today.
Yeah, please comment below on one, your favorite Yo Mama joke, and two, whether we should have an entire episode dedicated to Yo Mama jokes, because we both thought, while our mamas might not really appreciate it,
no,
it's not a bad idea either.
Yeah, and it's a topic that's it's a really popular topic, and people really want. There's a lot of learning lessons, and a lot of takeaways in mama jokes. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of learning opportunities out there about oneself through mama jokes.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that for another one, I guess. Maybe. Thank you very much for joining us today.
We're not going to record that one probably over a beer, because that one will be stupid. I mean, for all of us, but
maybe audience participation also in that one. But super appreciate you guys joining us today. Please share with coworkers, other leaders, CMOs, and like it, and join us on our next episode. We appreciate you, and comment below. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.